కొంచెం చెప్తారా? ఇది కొద్దిగా ఇబ్బంది కొంచెం చెప్తారు. మీరు సరే ఈ కుర్చీలో కూర్చొని మీకు ఇబ్బంది అవుతుంది. ఒకవేళ ఇలా చూడండి.
స్టార్ట్ అయిందా? Good morning, everyone. See, today, just all of you identify this picture. See, in the first picture, the upper picture, if you identify means observe the eyes. What happened? See, on the left side, the eyeball is normal, but whereas on the right side, it is deviated medially. Whereas in the lower, means second picture, see the left eyeball, it is shifted upwards. And in the lower picture also, it is shifted almost upwards. So, what indicates here, something is misaligned. The eyeballs are misaligned. So, what is this misalignment of the eyeball? That's the actual topic today. So, the muscles which are responsible for the eyeballs, which are known as extraocular muscles. So, these extraocular muscles, if paralyzed, means the nerves which are supplying these muscles, if damaged, what happened? The movements of the eyeballs are, means something shifted, means misaligned. So, to know what are these extraocular muscles, we should know some important structures. So, before going to that, so these are the things we should know. So, learners should know the following. These extraocular muscles means the eyeball associated muscles, where these structures are present, which are present in the orbits. So, what is the orbit? We should know. And what are the boundaries? Then what are the dimensions of the orbit? Then what are the important relations? So, on all sides, what are the important relations of this bony orbit? Then contents, as I told, the eyeball and associated structures. So, all these structures are present within the bony orbit. So, it includes the fascia of the orbit, the fat of the orbit, eyeball, lacrimal gland, extraocular muscles which are responsible for the movement of the eyeball, then vessels, nerves which are supplying the eyeball, and other structures present in the orbit. Then, as today's topic is extraocular muscles, we should know some clinical aspects of the extraocular muscles. Now, we'll go through the details. Now, coming to the orbit. So, what is this orbit? Orbit is a bony structure. You see, these are the two cavities. What are these two cavities? Bony cavities which are present on the frontal aspect of the skull. On the facial skeleton, we can identify two bony cavities which are enclosed by 7 bones. Altogether, 7 bones are enclosing, where it forms the bony cavity. And roughly you see, the bony orbit is 4-sided pyramid. So, as it is pyramid, so what are the boundaries, important boundaries? As I told, this is 4-sided pyramid. So, 4-sided means 4 walls must be there, which includes the roof, lateral wall, floor, and medial wall. So, the continuous walls, roof, lateral wall, floor, and medial wall. Then, the base of the pyramid is represented by an orbital margin. Here you see, this is a orbital margin. So, the orbital margin is a continuous margin. It is formed by the 3 bones. So, what are these 3 bones which are forming the orbital margin? Here you see, this is forehead is formed by the frontal bone. This is squamous part of the frontal bone. Here, this frontal bone, it presents a margin. This is known as supraorbital margin. At this supraorbital margin, you can see the inner aspect of this. At this supraorbital margin, what happened? The bone is extending horizontally, where it forms the 2 orbital plates. 2 orbital plates. So, What is this supraorbital margin? At the supraorbital margin, the squamous part of the frontal bone extends backwards as a plate-like structure which is known as orbital plate. So that orbital plate forms the actual roof of the bony orbit. Then lateral margin of the orbit is formed by the zygomatic bone. Zygomatic bone. So here the zygomatic bone, here you identify the cursor. This is supraorbital margin. So it is formed by the frontal bone, whereas this is lateral margin of the orbit formed by the zygomatic bone. So these two bones are interconnected by means of suture. What is that? Frontozygomatic suture. Then this zygomatic bone articulates with the maxilla. So here the inferior orbital margin is formed by the zygomatic bone and maxilla. Then medial margin. The medial margin is formed by the frontal process of the maxilla. So the bone, this is maxilla. See, this is maxilla. It extends upwards. So what is that upward projection? Is the frontal process of the maxilla. So this maxilla here articulates with the frontal bone. This is the frontomaxillary suture, and medially the maxillar bone is articulates with the nasal bones. This is a suture between the nasal bone and maxilla. So a continuous orbital margin. So here the orbital margin representing the base of the bony orbit. Then as it is cone shaped or pyramid shaped, it has an apex. So apex is lies posteriorly, most posteriorly. Here you can identify this is an apex. On the left orbit, identify apex of the orbit. So what are the boundaries of the bony orbit? The bony orbit presents a roof. Here roof is formed by the, in this picture you can clearly identify this is the roof. So the here blue color bone means indicating the bone is the orbital plate of the frontal bone. Then here this is the lesser wing of the sphenoid. So lesser wing of the sphenoid and frontal bone which forms a roof. Then this is the lateral wall. So lateral wall is formed by the greater wing of the sphenoid and this zygomatic bone. Then floor of the orbit. The floor of the orbit is mainly by the maxilla bone, orbital surface of the maxilla, and this is the zygomatic bone. Then medial wall is formed by the, from posterior to anterior, the sphenoid bone, body of the sphenoid. Then this is a small bony part which is derived from the palatine bone. So palatine bone, orbital process of the palatine bone, and this is the important bone which is forming the medial wall, ethmoid bone. And just anterior to that, this is the lacrimal bone, and still anterior to this maxilla. So palatine bone, ethmoid, lacrimal bone and maxilla, which are forming the medial wall of the orbit. So in the medial wall, you can appreciate, see the lacrimal bone, it forms a crest which is known as posterior lacrimal crest. And this frontal process of the maxilla forms a crest which is known as anterior lacrimal crest. So in between these two crests, we can see a fossa which lodges the lacrimal sac. So this is a fossa for the lacrimal sac. And this lacrimal sac leads into a bony canal which is known as nasolacrimal duct, communicates with the nasal cavity. So this is a medial wall. And if you identify the junction between the roof and medial wall, two foramens are there. These are the anterior and posterior ethmoidal foramens. Anterior and posterior ethmoidal foramen. Similarly, the junction between the roof and lateral wall, we can appreciate the fissure. Means a junction between the superior means roof and the lateral wall. What is this? A fissure which is known as superior orbital fissure. Whereas junction between this lateral wall and the floor, we can appreciate one more retort shaped fissure. What is that? Inferior orbital fissure. And these two fissures which are forming a V-shaped structure. So what is this? Superior orbital fissure, and here this is inferior orbital fissure. So through this superior orbital fissure, the orbit can communicate with the middle cranial fossa. Whereas through this inferior orbital fissure, the orbit communicates with the infraorbital region. This is the infratemporal fossa. So the orbit can communicate through this inferior orbital fissure with this infratemporal region, or otherwise called infratemporal fossa. So these are the boundaries. So within these bony boundaries, we can appreciate the important structure. What is that? Eyeball, and the structures which are associated with the eyeball. So what are those structures? We'll see. Before that, what are the dimensions of the orbit? So the maximum dimensions we can appreciate at this base, otherwise called orbital margin. So at the orbital margin, what is the vertical extent? Means vertical diameter and horizontal diameter. Here you see, just you compare, the vertical diameter is less than the horizontal. So this is the 35 mm vertical, whereas horizontally this is 40 mm horizontally. So these are the dimensions at the orbital margin. Then what is the angle? Here you see, if you appreciate, this is the line representation of the orbit. If you identify, the medial wall of the orbit is parallel to the opposite side. So it is a straight line, whereas the lateral wall is somewhat sloping, means obliquely placed. So the angle between this means this is the medial wall and lateral wall. If you identify, now what is the angle is 45 degrees. Whereas 23 degrees between the visual and orbital axis. So what are these visual and orbital axis? Identify, this is an eyeball. If you draw a line from the anterior pole to the posterior pole, that is the visual axis. Means it passes directly through the eyeball and extends from the anterior pole to the posterior pole. Whereas what is the orbital axis? See, as I told, the orbital axis is oblique because this medial wall is straight, whereas lateral wall is oblique. So here you appreciate, this is a visual axis and this is orbital axis. So it passes through the center of the orbit. So there is an angle between this visual axis and orbital axis, that is nothing but 23 degrees. Now coming to what are the important relations of this orbit. If you see the radiological image, see these are the two orbit cavities. So above this orbit, bony orbit is related to this cranial fossa. This is anterior cranial fossa. Whereas just below this orbit, you can appreciate this sinus. This is a maxillary sinus. And on the medial side, you can appreciate here the ethmoidal sinuses. Still posteriorly, there is a sphenoid sinus. So medially, the orbit is related to the sphenoidal and ethmoidal sinuses. Then what are the relations on the lateral side? Here you see, this is an orbit. So laterally, what is that? Laterally. So laterally, it is related to this temporal and infratemporal fossa. Whereas inside, in the cranial cavity, you can identify here, this is related to the middle cranial fossa. Middle cranial fossa. So, what are the relations? Here you can appreciate this is the orbit. So, below we can identify this maxillary sinus, and medially ethmoidal sinuses and sphenoidal sinus posteriorly, and above it is related to the anterior cranial fossa. Then laterally it is related with this temporal fossa, and somewhat below, this is a temporal fossa, and below that infratemporal fossa and middle cranial fossa. These are the relations. Now, what are the contents of this orbit? Orbit means bony orbit. So within the bony orbit, what are the important structures? Here you see, this is an eyeball located, it is actually located in the anterior third of the orbit. Then the associated structures. Here, the entire orbit has a facial lining. So we can identify first the eyeball and associated muscles. And the bony orbit is lined by fascia, that is the fascia of the orbit. Then the nerves which are supplying the eyeball or orbit, and vessels which are supplying the orbit. Then important gland, what is that? Lacrimal gland we can see in the orbit. And what is the location of this lacrimal gland? See, lacrimal gland is present. This is the roof and this is lateral wall. So at this junction, so anterolateral angle of the roof presents a depression where we can see the lacrimal gland, orbital part of the lacrimal gland here. And at the anteromedial angle, means the junction between the medial wall and the roof, we can appreciate one depression, small depression, sometimes maybe a spine also present. So what is this structure? Where there is a fibrous pulley is attached. So these are the two structures you have to know. In the anterolateral angle of the roof, we can appreciate a depression for the lacrimal gland, orbital part of the lacrimal gland. Whereas at the anteromedial angle, we can appreciate small depression which is for the pulley of the superior oblique muscle. What is that pulley? I will discuss later. So this is the important structure here. So that is the lacrimal gland and lacrimal sac. As I told, lacrimal sac means it is present. See, this is a lacrimal bone forming a crest. This is posterior lacrimal crest. And this is frontal process of the maxilla. It forms the anterior lacrimal crest. So in between there is a depression where there is a lacrimal sac. So here the lacrimal sac and this posterior lacrimal crest and anterior lacrimal crest receives a fascia, that is a lacrimal fascia. Now, what is the fascia of the orbit? So what is this fascia? From where it is coming to the orbit? So as you have to know, here this important structure, see, this is the optic nerve. The cursor is on the optic nerve. So optic nerve, it's not a peripheral nerve. It is actually an extension of the brain. How can you know? Because this optic nerve is covered by all the three meninges of the brain. So what are the three meninges? Outermost is dura, then arachnoid and pia. So we can appreciate that two spaces also among the three meninges, arachnoid and subdural spaces we can appreciate here. So this optic nerve, while appears in the orbit through the optic canal. So once the optic nerve enters the orbit through this optic canal, so as it is covered by all the three meninges, so here at the optic canal, what happened? The outermost covering, that is dura mater. The dura mater is divided into two layers, outer layer and inner layer. So the inner layer is covering a sheath around this optic nerve. Then outer layer, it just extends on to the parietes, means where it covers the bones of the orbit. So all the bones are covered by a fascia which is derived from the outer layer of the dura mater. So once the dura mater around the optic nerve enters into the orbit exactly at the optic canal, that is the apex of the orbit. So what happens? It divides into outer and inner layers. The outer layer, it covers the bones of the orbit. So as it is covering the bones, here we can call it as periorbita, means orbital fascia. That is nothing but orbital fascia or periorbita, or simply this is a periosteum of the orbit. So it is derived from the dura mater. So where the dura is divided into outer and inner sheaths. So this periorbita, it covers the all the bones, and it is not adherent to the bones. It is firmly attached. So we can strip off this fascia from the orbit very easy. So what is that? Periorbita, or otherwise called periosteum. Then this periorbita, what happened? On reaching the orbital margin. So at the orbital margin, what happened? It extends on to the eyelids. Here you see in the second picture, this here at the level of orbital margin. So from the orbital margin, what happened? This orbital fascia extends downwards, means projects into the eyelids, both upper eyelid and lower eyelid. So this portion of the orbital fascia is known as palpebral fascia. Why? Because it is present within the eyelids. So palpebral fascia, it is just a continuity of the periorbita. From where? Along the orbital margins, right? So close to the margin of the lids, each lid, this is the upper eyelid, this is lower. So close to the lid margin, what happened? This orbital palpebral fascia is thickened. Here you can identify an almond-shaped structure, somewhat thickened compared to with this one. See, close to the lid margin in almond shape, there is a thickening of this fascia. See, this thickening is known as tarsal plate. So to strengthen the eyelids, both eyelids, upper and lower lids, what happened? This palpebral fascia. Here, this palpebral fascia, also known as orbital septum. Here I have included third one, orbital septum. So what is orbital septum? Palpebral fascia, or it's a continuity of the orbital fascia from the orbital margins, right? And projects into the lids, eyelid, as well as from below it is lower eyelid. So this orbital septum thickened close to the eyelid margin, which is known as tarsal plate. Superior tarsal plate is almond shaped, whereas inferior tarsal plate is somewhat rod shaped and smaller diameter where compared to with the upper one. So superior tarsal plate and inferior tarsal plate. And these two tarsal plates, both at the medial end and at the lateral end, they are connected by means of a fibrous band. So this fibrous band is known as medially, this is a medial palpebral ligament, and laterally, lateral palpebral ligament. So this lateral palpebral ligament is attached to a bony tubercle on the lateral wall of the orbit. Here you see, just below the frontozygomatic suture. This is frontozygomatic suture. On the inner aspect, just below the frontozygomatic suture, there is a tubercle, which is known as Whitney's tubercle. So to this Whitney's tubercle, this lateral palpebral ligament is attached. So what are these palpebral ligaments? Just medial ends and lateral ends of the both of the tarsal plates, which are connected by means of a thick fibrous band, condensed band, which is known as palpebral ligament. So medial palpebral ligament, and this is lateral palpebral ligament. So this is orbital septum. Then what is the lacrimal fascia? As I told, it covers the orbit. Then on the lacrimal groove, where it across the anterior and posterior lacrimal crest, the fascia forming a sac. So what is that? Lacrimal fascia. Then one more structure, pullae for superior oblique muscle. As I told, at the junction between the roof and medial wall, there is a small depression where we can see the attachment of the pullae, fibrous pullae. Actually, this is a fibrocartilaginous pullae. From where it is derived, it is a part of this condensation of the orbital fascia. Then, as I told, the dura mater again divides into inner layer. So, what is this inner layer? So, this inner layer extends from the optic canal, where it enters into the orbit. So optic canal, then it covers the optic nerve. On reaching the eyeball, it is extending on to the sclera. So there is a space between the sclera and this fascia. There is a episcleral space. So what happened? As it is approaching the eyeball and also the enclosing the muscles. These muscles, these are extraocular muscles. So this fascia is also known as Tenon's fascia or bulbar fascia. As it is covering the eyeball, it is also known as bulbar fascia or Tenon's capsule. So this Tenon capsule extends from this optic canal to this where the optic nerve is attached. And see, at this level, what happened? It reflects on to the eyeball. And this extension extends up to which level? Up to the sclerocorneal junction. So the extension up to the sclerocorneal junction. As it is going forwards, what happens? It forms a tubular sheath around each and every muscle outside the eyeball. So this is a tubular sheath around these muscles. Then, so here it forms a cup-shaped socket. So the eyeball can move easily within the socket. What is that socket? It is a facial socket. And this facial socket is formed by the bulbar fascia. Then medial cheek ligament. Here you see, as I told, each and every muscle is covered by this bulbar fascia. So from the tubular sheath of the medial rectus and lateral rectus, it extends triangular expansion, presents a triangular expansion, which are known as check ligaments. So from the medial rectus, medial check ligament, from the lateral rectus, lateral check ligament. So this lateral check ligament is attached to the Whitnall's tubercle, and medial ligament is attached to the bony wall. So here, this is attached to this anterior lacrimal crest. So coming to this lower, just below the eyeball, we have inferior rectus and inferior oblique muscle, means other two muscles, enclosed by tubular sheath. So this tubular sheath is expanded in the midline just below the eyeball, means where it joins with the fascia around this inferior rectus and inferior oblique muscle. So together what happened? The medial check ligament, lateral check ligament, and in between this ligament, tubular sheath expansion, which is forming a hood-like structure. So this hood forms, it means a suspensory ligament, means the eyeball is suspended. So what is this ligament is called? Suspensory ligament of the eyeball. Otherwise called, this ligament name is Lockwood, suspensory ligament of Lockwood. So these are the expansions. So bulbar fascia, you have to know. So what is this inner layer of the dura sheath as it covering the optic nerve? Then how it forms the facial socket for the eyeball as it approaches the sclerocorneal junction. Then tubular sheath for each and every muscle, orbital muscle. Then medial check ligament, lateral check ligament, and the suspensory ligament of the Lockwood. Now coming to the orbital fat. So this orbital fat, wherever spaces, means between these tubular sheets, means bulbar fascia and orbital fascia, the space is occupied by the fat. So this entire fat gives a cushion-like structure for the stability of the eyeball. So one of the factor to stabilize the eyeball within the orbit is the orbital fat. So wherever the space is present, it is occupied by this orbital fat. Now actual topic is extraocular muscles. So what are these extraocular? Name indicates it is extraocular. So outside the eyeball, what are those muscles and what for these muscles? So these are extraocular muscles again classified into voluntary and involuntary, because it has 4 recti and 2 oblique and 1 levator palpebrae superior. Actually, this levator palpebrae superior is elevator of the upper eyelid. So the muscles which are moving the eyeball voluntary are the 4 recti and 2 oblique. So 4 recti includes the superior rectus. Here you can see this is superior rectus muscle, and this is superior oblique muscle. This is a lateral rectus, and this is medial rectus muscle, and this is inferior rectus muscle, and from anterior to posterior, this is the inferior oblique. So these are the voluntary muscles. Then involuntary muscles are superior tarsus, inferior tarsus, and orbitalis muscle. So these are the various muscles, how they are taking origin. See here, so how they are taking origin. So 4 recti muscles, they takes origin. See, this is lesser wing and here below greater wing. So here they are taking a common origin. So by the common origin, what happened? And they are taking tendinous origin. So by this common tendinous origin, at the origin, all the 4 recti forming a continuous ring, which is known as annulus of Ginn. So from this annulus of Ginn, the muscle fibers are taking origin and passes forwards. So this is a lateral rectus muscle. This is superior rectus, inferior rectus, and medial rectus is after reflecting all these muscles we can see. So 4 recti muscle takes a common origin from superior orbital fissure. As I told for first, here you see, this is a superior orbital fissure. So here, these 4 recti muscle takes origin, common origin So what happened? This superior orbital fissure is divided by means of common tendinous ring. So what is this common tendinous ring? It's a common origin for the recti muscles, 4 recti muscles. So by this common tendinous ring, what happened? This superior orbital fissure is divided into 3 compartments. Lateral compartment, intermediate means within the tendinous ring, and medial compartment. So these 4 recti muscles, they are going to insert on the just behind the sclerocorneal junction, but in front of the equator. So what is the insertion of these muscles? Superior rectus is going forwards and inserted just behind the sclerocorneal junction, but it should be in front of the equator. Similarly, lateral rectus, sclerocorneal junction on the lateral aspect of eyeball, just behind the sclerocorneal junction. Then inferior rectus, inferior quadrant, it is inserted where we just behind the sclerocorneal junction, but it should be in front of the equator. So all the 4 recti muscles are inserted behind this sclerocorneal junction, but in front of the equator. Here you must know one thing. What are these extraocular muscles? What is the importance? As I told, these are muscles for the movement of the eyeball. So here the eyeball muscles within the socket of fascia, as I told, the fascia bulbi forms a facial socket. Within that facial socket, the eyeball can move freely. But how the eyeball is stabilized, means placed in that position. What are the factors? So the main factor is by the balanced action of the all 4 recti muscles from behind, and 2 oblique muscles from in front. So how, I will explain later. Then the 2 check ligaments, medial check ligament, lateral check ligament. So they are preventing the posterior displacement of the eyeball. Then the suspensory ligament of the eyeball, it is maintaining the eyeball position from below. So even though if you remove the maxilla bone, the eyeball can't descend, because it is supported from below, well supported by a fibrous sheath. What is that? Suspensory ligament of the eyeball. So the fact is very, very important to stabilize the eyeball. Coming to the inferior oblique muscle. So inferior oblique muscle takes origin from the floor, just medial to lateral to the nasolacrimal duct. You should appreciate in the bone. So just means the junction between the medial wall and the floor, where that is the origin for the inferior oblique, and it extends backwards below the eyeball and is inserted to the upper quadrant of the eyeball. But these 2 oblique muscles are inserted to the eyeball behind the, because recti muscles are in front of the equator, they are inserting, whereas these oblique muscles are inserting behind the equator. Now coming to the superior oblique muscle. So the superior oblique muscle takes origin from this just above the recti, then it extends forwards along the medial rectus, upperward of the medial rectus, and at the medial end, means at the junction between the roof and medial wall, anterior most, it forms a tendon. So this tendon takes a direction backwards, means until the pulley, what is the direction of the superior oblique muscle? Forward direction. So at the pulley, the muscle takes a backward direction. So it extends backwards and is inserted to the sclera just behind the equator. So the 2 oblique muscles are inserted onto the sclera behind the equator, whereas the recti muscles are inserted onto the sclera behind the sclerocorneal junction, but in front of the equator. Then the other important muscle, extraocular muscle, levator palpebrae superioris. See, the levator palpebrae superioris, it takes origin from the sphenoid bone and it extends further forwards above the eyeball. Then close to the orbital margin, it is splitted into 3 lamellae. So the upper lamellae is tendinous and is passing through the orbital septum. Here you see this is orbital septum. What is orbital septum? It is a continuity of the orbital fascia into the eyelids. So here it is piercing the orbital septum and a muscle present within the eyelid, that is the orbicularis oculi. So it is piercing that muscle further and is inserted to the dermis of the upper eyelid. So by this insertion, this part of the levator palpebrae superioris elevates the eyelid. Then the intermediate lamella of the levator palpebrae superioris is attached to the superior border of the superior tarsus. Means the part of the levator palpebrae superioris is attached to the superior tarsus. So by this, it is a extension. What is the use of this muscle? Is the elevation of the upper eyelid, because it is inserted to the superior tarsal plate, and this portion of the muscle is known as molars muscle. But this molars muscle is not a voluntary muscle. It is an involuntary muscle because it is supplied by the involuntary nerve. I will explain in the nerve supply. Then this is, you can identify, this is the eyelid. The innermost covering of the eyelid, this is a mucous membrane, and this is a conjunctiva. So conjunctiva covers the eyelid, so palpebral conjunctiva, and it extends on to the eyeball, so bulbar conjunctiva. So reflection from the eyelid to the eyeball. So this reflection extends up to the sclerocorneal junction. And all these details you will see in the next further classes. But just you see what is this reflection. So conjunctiva, palpebral conjunctiva reflects onto the eyeball as a bulbar. So at this junction, here it forms a fornix, which is known as superior fornix. So to this superior fornix, some of the levator palpebrae muscle fibers gets attached. So these are the three slits of the levator palpebrae superiors. So levator palpebrae, by inserted to the dermis of eyelid, it is an elevator, and part of muscle is inserted to the superior tarsal plate and is elevating the eyelid, and the part of the muscle is inserted to the superior fornix. Then the innervation, I told you this is a voluntary muscle. So here a voluntary muscle is supplied by the oculomotor nerve. If paralysis of the levator results in drooping, means there is no elevation, there is no function. So what happened? It is drooping. Upper eyelid is closed. Here you can see the left eye. This is a paralysis due to paralysis of the levator palpebrae superioris. So drooping, otherwise called ptosis of the upper eyelid. Then how the eyeball is moved by means of these muscles. So around the three axes, we can see the muscle is, eyeball is moving around these three axes by the action of the muscles. So what are these axes? Vertical axis, anterior-posterior axis means from anterior pole to posterior pole, and the transverse axis. And all the three axes must pass through the equator. So these three axes. Then what are the movements? Here you see, this is the vertical axis. Around the vertical axis, the eyeball can move either medially or laterally. So medially by means of medial rectus. So around the vertical axis, this is the vertical axis. So eyeball move medially or laterally. So what are these movements? Adduction and abduction. So adduction by the medial rectus, abduction by the lateral rectus muscle. Then around the transverse axis, what are the movements of the eyeball? Either elevation or depression. This is a transverse axis. The eyeball can move downwards or upwards. So what is this movement? The elevation or depression. So elevation by means of the superior rectus, depression by means of the inferior rectus around the transverse axis. Then what is this anterior-posterior axis? Now you clearly observe. This is the anterior-posterior axis from the anterior pole to the posterior pole. Then just to identify the 12 o'clock position of the cornea. So through this anterior-posterior axis, the 12 o'clock position of the cornea moves inwards. That is nothing but intorsion. If the 12 o'clock position of the cornea moves outwards, means lateral like this. So what is that? Extorsion. The movement is extorsion. So elevation, depression around transverse axis, abduction and adduction around the vertical axis, intorsion and extorsion by means of anteroposterior axis. These are the various expressions. See the right eye. The eye is laterally rotated, not rotated, move. So what is this? Bilateral rectus muscle. Whereas the left side, medial rectus. Here one thing you have to know, a single muscle can't work. Means no muscle is work alone. So the association of the muscles, we can move our eyes. So these are the conjugate movements. See here, to see the left side or right side by two eyes, means one should be medially, means adducted, and the other one is abducted. So this is the right side lateral rectus and this is medial rectus. Similarly here, the right side medial rectus and left is lateral rectus. Here the both eyes are superior rectus, so elevation, then inferior oblique. Whereas here right side is inferior oblique. Here you see the cornea is rotating outwards like this, and the left side is the superior rectus, elevation. These are the various movements. Here you can see both eyes, inferior rectus and superior oblique, means inward rotation. Then coming to the involuntary extraocular muscles. So involuntary extraocular muscles are superior tarsal, inferior tarsal and orbitalis muscle. Here what is superior tarsal muscle? As I told you, this levator palpebrae superior slip is going to attach the superior tarsal plate. So that portion of the muscle is known as superior tarsus and otherwise called Muller's muscle. And it is supplied by the sympathetic, not by the voluntary nerve. So that's why this muscle is involuntary muscle. And what is the purpose of this muscle is elevation of the upper eyelid. Then what is inferior tarsal muscle? It takes origin from the fascia of the lower eyelid and from the fascia covering this lid and is attached to the lower border of the tarsal plate. So inferior tarsal plate is this muscle. So what is this muscle is inferior tarsal muscle, and it is supplied by the again sympathetic, and action is depression of the lower eyelid. Then what is orbitalis muscle? Orbitalis muscle, if you identify the floor of the orbit, here you see on the floor it presents a groove which is known as infraorbital groove. This infraorbital groove is bridged by fascia. I told all the bones of the orbit are covered by the periorbita or orbital fascia. So here the orbital fascia is, means in the place of that orbital fascia, the unstriped muscle we can see bridging this infraorbital groove. So what is that muscle is called? Orbitalis muscle. But exact function we don't know. But by the pull of this muscle, it helps in the maintaining the equilibrium of the eyeball. So that is a maybe function of the orbitalis. So these are the three muscles, involuntary muscles present outside the eyeball, helping the elevation or depression of the eyelids. Then what is the arterial supply of the orbit? So the main arterial supply of the orbit derived from the ophthalmic artery. The ophthalmic artery is a branch of the internal carotid artery. So this internal carotid artery, after taking origin from this internal carotid artery, it passes through the optic canal along the optic nerve. So these are the two structures are enclosed by a common dural sheath. Then once it appears in the orbit, it leaves the dural sheath, means by piercing, and it extends from lateral to medial side, crossing this optic nerve. Then here it gives off important branches. What are the branches are giving to the eyeball? Here it is giving branch to the eyeball, posterior ciliary branches. And one branch here, it is passing through this optic nerve, means within the substance of the optic nerve, that is the central artery of the retina. And this central artery of the retina is an end artery. So if there is any damage to this artery, there is no further, means it gives a blindness. So what is this end artery? This is the central artery which is passing through the substance of the optic nerve, and this is posterior ciliary branches giving to the eyeball. So on reaching this sclera, it pierces and appears in the choroid. So here this posterior ciliary branches giving two sets, long ciliary and short ciliary. So the short ciliary branches present in the choroid layer and forming the plexus. From this plexus, it supplies these inner layers of the retina. Then this long ciliary arteries passes along this sclera and anastomoses with the anterior ciliary branches, which are derived from the muscular branches of the eyeball. So this is a posterior ciliary branches. Then if you identify this ophthalmic artery after crossing this optic nerve, first it gives off anterior ethmoidal, then posterior ethmoidal. Here posterior ethmoidal and anterior ethmoidal arteries. Then on reaching the medial angle of the eye, it is terminating. So what is the this ophthalmic artery is terminating into dorsal, nasal and infratrochlear arteries. This is the termination of the ophthalmic artery. Then on its course again it gives off branches, some other important branches. This is the lacrimal artery. So the lacrimal artery accompanies the lacrimal nerve and it supplies the lacrimal gland, the lacrimal fascia. So this is an important branch here. This is lacrimal artery. So all these branches are taking origin from the ophthalmic artery. Then what is a venous drainage? So veins are draining the orbit by means of superior and inferior ophthalmic veins. So superior ophthalmic veins, it is formed at the medial angle of the eye. So here it may communicates with the angular vein, and this is the supraorbital and supratrochlear vein, and further it drains. Here it receives the lacrimal vein, then forms the superior ophthalmic vein. So sometimes superior ophthalmic vein passing separately through the superior orbital fissure and enters into the cavernous sinus. Sometimes it may communicate with the inferior ophthalmic vein, and here it may communicate with the pterygoid venous plexus. So what is the inferior ophthalmic vein? So other arterial branches, these veins are accompanying other arterial branches and forming the inferior ophthalmic vein. So this inferior ophthalmic vein communicates with the cavernous sinus. So it drains into this cavernous sinus. The nerves of the orbit. Here, what are the nerves? So after removing the roof of the orbit, we can see the structures. This is eyeball and associated all these muscles, then nerves. So what are these nerves? Here, the nerves are first optic nerve. So this is a optic nerve. It extends, means it takes origin from the ganglion cells of the retina. Then all the fibers, means axons, are collectively forming the optic nerve, and it pierces the eyeball just 3 mm medial to this posterior pole. So just 3 mm medial to the posterior pole. Then it passes backwards and passes through the optic canal. Then it ends in the optic chiasma. And this is a sensory nerve for the vision. So here, the importance of this optic nerve here, it is devoid of the neurolemma, but the oligodendrocytes are covering and forms the myelin sheath. So devoid of the neurolemma, if any damage to this optic nerve, there is no regeneration. So complete blindness. So this is the optic nerve. Total, this is length of the optic nerve is 4 centimeters. This is the intraorbital part. This is canalicular part, means within the optic canal. Then this is intracranial part, and it terminates at the optic chiasma. And the details we will know in the optic nerve. Separate cranial nerve classes are there. So this is the optic nerve important. Then oculomotor nerve. Here, oculomotor nerve is a voluntary nerve because it supplies the somatic nerve, because it supplies the all extraocular muscles except SO4 LR6. This formula you should remember. So all the extraocular muscles are supplied by the oculomotor nerve except LR6 SO4. SO4 means superior oblique by means of the trochlear nerve, and LR6 means lateral rectus by means of a sixth cranial, that is adjacent nerve. And remaining all the muscles are supplied by this oculomotor nerve. So it enters the orbit through the superior orbital fissure. Then here it gives off branches. So all the muscular branches. And one important branch from the oculomotor nerve relay in the ciliary ganglion. I will explain what is the ciliary ganglion in the next slides. Now coming to the trochlear nerve. So trochlear nerve is a fourth cranial nerve. It enters the orbit through the superior orbital fissure. So after entering this, here it accompanies, this is a trochlear nerve for the superior oblique muscle. So it accompanies the superior oblique muscle and supplies the superior oblique muscle. Adjacent nerve. So adjacent nerve, it passes through the superior orbital fissure, and within the orbit, it gives so many branches and supplies the, means divide into number of branches, and it supplies the lateral rectus muscle. Then other important structure nerve, that is trigeminal nerve. So trigeminal means it is a fifth cranial nerve. As the name indicates, trigeminal means it divides into three divisions. So ophthalmic, maxillary, mandibular. Out of three, this ophthalmic division, it enters into the orbit through superior orbital fissure. So once it enters into the orbit, immediately it divides into, here you see, immediately it divides into supraorbital and supratrochlear. Where it is now. So frontal nerve is divides into supratrochlear and supraorbital. So supratrochlear nerve, it leaves the orbit through a notch on the supraorbital margin, and it appears in the forehead, where it supplies the lower part of the forehead. Before reaching the forehead, it supplies the skin of the upper eyelid, medial part of the skin of the upper eyelid. Then the other important branch is supraorbital nerve. It leaves the orbit through a foramen. Here, this is a notch, supraorbital notch. Supraorbital notch, or sometimes it may be converted into foramen, through which supraorbital nerve leaves the orbit and appears on the forehead, where it supplies the forehead and it supplies the scalp as far as behind the lambda, up to the suture lambda. Then lacrimal nerve. Lacrimal nerve is a sensory, and it carries the secretomotor fibers to the lacrimal gland through the zygomatic-temporal. Actually, this lacrimal nerve is a branch of ophthalmic, means it is only sensory. So where it receives these secretomotor fibers? From the branch, that is zygomatic-temporal nerve. It is a branch of the maxillary nerve. In infratemporal fossa, we'll see the details of this nerve. The nasociliary nerve. It's a other branch of this ophthalmic division, and here it gives off important branches. You'll see here. See here. This is a nasociliary nerve. So this nasociliary nerve enters into the orbit through the superior orbital fissure and gives off posterior ethmoidal nerve, anterior ethmoidal nerve. So this is actually continuity. Then this further gives off one branch, that is the infratrochlear nerve. So this anterior and posterior ethmoidal nerves passes through these foramens, anterior and posterior ethmoidal foramens. Then this supplying the ethmoidal air sinuses. Then this anterior ethmoidal nerve appears in the nasal cavity, where it supplies, divides into medial and lateral branches, those supplying the lateral wall and medial wall of the nasal cavity. Anterior part of the nasal cavity is supplied by this anterior ethmoidal nerve. Then sympathetic innervation. So sympathetics are derived from this superior cervical ganglion along the passes through, means forming plexus around this internal carotid artery, and through these branches of the ophthalmic artery supplies the eyeball. And moreover, here ciliary ganglion you have to know. See, this is ciliary ganglion, very small ganglion, pinhead size, present in the orbit just between the lateral rectus and optic nerve. So it has three roots. Here you see the sympathetics around the ophthalmic artery connected to this ganglia, and now to inferior oblique from the oculomotor nerve connects the ganglion, and nasociliary nerve also connected to the ganglion. So nasociliary nerve convey the sensory fibers, sympathetic fibers through this route, and now to inferior oblique carries motor fibers. So they are giving from the anterior margin of this ganglion the short ciliary nerves which arises and supplies the eyeball. So these sympathetic fibers are supplying the ciliaris muscle, and the sympathetics are supplying the dilator pupillae, whereas these fibers derived from the inferior, now to inferior oblique, supplying the sphincter pupillae. And the sensory fibers receive the pain, touch, temperature sensations from the eyeball. And this is the misalignment of the eyes. See, normally we can see this is a normal movement position of the eyeballs, and this is a hypotropia. Here you see on the right side, the hypotropia means the deviation of the eyeball towards the lower part, and hypertropia means elevated eyeball, and exotropia means you see on the lateral side, and esotropia means medially deviated. So this is a misalignment due to involvement of the various nerves. So oculomotor means here this is a ptosis. Oculomotor means all the muscles except lateral rectus and superior oblique. So these are the various lesions due to the oculomotor nerve palsy. Then this is a trochlear nerve palsy. So trochlear nerve palsy means there is a hypertropia and extorsion. Then this is abducent nerve palsy. See, this is normal, and if you want to see the side, so this is the internal spin due to involvement of the, means paralysis of the medial lateral rectus. So lateral rectus is supplied by the abducent nerve. So this is also known as abducent nerve palsy. Thank you.